It started with a scream, faint like the echo of a memory, yet sharp enough to pierce the steady lull of the ocean tide. For the people of Greywick Cove, a sleepy coastal village nestled beneath fog-shrouded cliffs, that scream would become a wound in the town's collective soul. On that cold October morning, the sea took 19-year-old Elara Wynne. But as the days turned into weeks, and the currents finally returned something to the shore, the villagers knew it wasn't her. Greywick Cove was the kind of place you only find on weather-beaten maps, where the wind always carried salt and whispers, and secrets settled in the sand like buried bones. The Wynne family had lived there for generations. Elara was their youngest, a free spirit with a laugh like wind chimes and a restlessness no one could quite pin down. She'd grown up with the sea as her playground, her confidant. As a child, she used to say the ocean spoke to her. Most chalked it up to an overactive imagination. She's always dreaming, her mother, Maeve, would say, brushing back her daughter's tangled hair. But Elara's dreams had teeth, and they bit deep. It was early morning when she disappeared. Her brother, Caleb, was the last to see her. She'd gone down to the beach just before dawn, barefoot, her journal tucked under her arm like always. Going to meet the tide, she said with a sleepy smile. But she never came back. Caleb found her journal hours later, its pages soaked and torn, lying at the edge of the rocks. No footprints led into the sea, only away from it, as if someone or something had walked out. Search parties scoured the coastline. Boats combed the waters for days, but all they found were shattered shells and silence. The town mourned. A service was held on the cliffs. Her mother wept into the wind, and Greywick tried to move on. Then, 3 weeks later, the ocean gave something back. It was a fisherman, old Ira from the harbor, who spotted her, kneeling at the water's edge just before sunrise. Her hair was matted with seaweed, her skin pale and wrinkled as if she'd spent centuries underwater. But her eyes were wrong. "Elara?" he whispered. She looked up but did not answer. She was taken home immediately, wrapped in blankets, offered warm tea, questioned gently. Maeve collapsed when she saw her. But Caleb knew from the moment he saw her that something was off. She barely spoke. She ate very little. She wouldn't sleep near the windows, and she flinched at the sound of waves. Gone was the sparkle in her step, the soft humming that always followed her. In its place was silence, deep, echoing silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was rough, like barnacles scraping a hull. "I dreamed. I drowned," she whispered one night. "But I didn't die. Something pulled me down. Something wanted me." Caleb tried to brush it off as trauma. But late at night, he'd hear her walking barefoot through the halls, whispering, laughing, talking to the dark. Animals wouldn't go near her. Their golden retriever, Luna, once her best companion, growled low and steady when she came close, before bolting into the forest, never to return. Mirrors began to fog up when she entered a room, no matter the temperature. Sometimes they cracked. And then there were the dreams. Everyone in the house started having them. Dreams of cold water flooding their lungs, of something dragging them under, of a voice not Elara's calling them to the sea. Maeve began to lose her grip, spending her nights lighting candles and placing salt lines at every door. She muttered prayers not even the local priest recognized. Caleb, ever the skeptic, began documenting everything. Dates, times, patterns. He noticed it was always worst during the full moon, that Elara never blinked when she stared at the ocean, that sometimes she wasn't breathing. One evening, he found her standing on the rocks again, her nightgown fluttering in the wind, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Why do you keep coming here?" he asked, stepping toward her. Her head turned slowly, too slowly. Her eyes were empty, not sad, not scared, just void. "I'm waiting," she replied, "for the tide to take me back." Word spread through the village that something was wrong. Children began waking up with salt in their hair. Fishermen claimed their nets were coming back tangled with teeth, not fish. A local boy went missing near the lighthouse. And every time something strange happened, someone would see Elara watching. Caleb's unease turned to fear. He started to research drownings, folklore, anything to make sense of what was happening. That's when he found it. An old maritime journal in the attic, belonging to his great-grandfather, a sailor long lost to legend. "Beware the sea taken," it read. "Sometimes the ocean swallows a soul and sends back a mimic, a hollow, a husk, not the person but the memory of them. And always, always, it waits to bring others home." He dropped the book. Outside, the waves crashed harder than they had in years. And inside, Elara stood by the window, humming a song no one had taught her. Greywick had become quieter since Elara's return, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Caleb knew now, whatever came back, it wasn't his sister. But how do you confront something wearing the face of someone you love? In his dreams, he saw the truth. A great shape beneath the waves, a mouth that stretched too wide, eyes that never closed. And Elara, floating just above it, tethered by threads of seaweed, whispering to the deep. She was gone, and it was still hungry. Caleb stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back in the dark water, sinking, the pressure squeezing his chest, the cold biting into his bones. And always, always he'd see her, Elara, not the girl he grew up with, but the thing she had become, pale, smiling, her eyes dark as the trenches. The nightmares weren't just in his head anymore, at least not entirely. He found seaweed under his pillow one morning, wet sand on the bedroom floor, and when he went to wash his face, the faucet coughed up salt water. Something was bleeding into the real world, and it was getting worse. He needed answers, not just folklore, real ones. He went to the town library, to the local historian, even to the lighthouse keeper, an old man named Renner who hadn't left his post in over 20 years. It was Renner who told him the truth, or at least as much of it as anyone dared to speak aloud. "There's an old legend round here," Renner said, nursing a chipped mug of black coffee, his voice gravel and salt, "about the drowned ones, the ones the sea don't keep, but don't quite let go either." Caleb raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Like ghosts." "Not ghosts. Worse. Echoes, maybe. Reflections. Like the sea copies the ones it takes, then sends them back, hollow. But they remember just enough to fool you." Renner leaned closer. "And if they fool you long enough, they take you with them." Back at home, things were unraveling. Maeve had boarded up the mirrors. "She watches from the glass," she whispered once, her hands shaking. Elara, whatever she was, seemed more distant each day, yet more present, as if she existed in every room, even when she wasn't there. Caleb tried to confront her, sat her down at the kitchen table, heart pounding like a war drum. "Elara," he said, "tell me what happened. The truth. What pulled you under?" She tilted her head, blinked once, slowly. "Do you know what the ocean is?" she asked softly. "It's not just water. It's a memory, a hunger, a door." Her voice changed on the last word, lower, hollow, like something echoing up from a deep, wet cave. "And I opened it." Caleb stood up so fast the chair fell back. "You're not my sister." She smiled. "No, but I remember how she screamed. The ocean's call." The days that followed blurred into a fog of anxiety. Caleb kept seeing things out of the corner of his eye, movements in the reflections of puddles, faces in the waves. The people of Greywick grew quieter, their eyes dimmer. 3 more people went missing. A girl on a morning jog, a diver who never surfaced, and a mailman whose bag washed ashore, full of letters with no addresses. The tide was rising higher than ever before. The shore pulled back like it was breathing in. And then the dreams stopped. Caleb woke in silence one morning. An unnatural, eerie silence. No gulls, no waves, just absence. Downstairs, Maeve was gone. No note, no signs of struggle. Only her rosary, hanging on the door handle, still wet with seawater. And Elara, if it was still Elara, was waiting at the foot of the stairs, smiling. She heard the song, she said. It was her turn. Something in Caleb snapped. He couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep researching, waiting, fearing. He had to do something. So he returned to the journal, the one written by his great-grandfather. Hidden within its brittle pages, he found a map. Not of land, but of tide. Of places along the coast where the veil thins. And one in particular marked with a symbol that looked like a spiral, an old tide cave only visible during the lowest tide of the year. Tonight, that night, Caleb stood at the edge of the cliffs, lantern in hand, eyes on the moonlit beach below. The cave mouth yawned open, black and wide and waiting, and he heard the humming again, Elara's voice, but layered, warped, as though something else hummed with her. He didn't look back as he descended the narrow path. He stepped into the cave. It was colder than outside. The walls slick with moisture, covered in carvings so old they'd blurred into shapes no human language could name. The sound of water lapping echoed, but it was wrong. Like it came from a throat, not a shore. He walked deeper. There were bones in the cave. Not animal, not old. A ring on a finger, a child's sandal, a braid of hair wrapped in kelp. And then he saw her. Not Elara. Not exactly. It stood in the water, waist deep, its form shimmering, like it was wearing her shape the way skin wears paint. Up close, the details were wrong. Eyes too wide, smile too straight, limbs that twitched never at the same time. You came, it said in her voice. Caleb raised the lantern. I want my sister back. The thing cocked its head. She's here. Would you like to see? And suddenly the water boiled. From the dark, a hand reached out. Then another. Dozens. Pale. Writhing. Begging. Elara! Caleb screamed. But the figure only laughed. Back at the surface, the tide surged forward, swallowing the footprints that led to the cave. And in the Wynn household, a door creaked open. Elara, or what remained of her, stepped inside, humming a new song. A song no one alive had ever heard before. But soon they would. Darkness swallowed the cave behind Caleb as he stood at the edge of the impossible. The water churned with fingers and faces, all reaching, all pleading. Their mouths moved, but no sound escaped. Only bubbles, as if their cries had long since been replaced by the sea's silence. The figure in the water, Elara's mimic, watched him with a calm that felt ancient, patient, terrifyingly sure. She called us, it said, its voice overlapping with whispers that didn't belong to her. She opened her soul to the deep, and the deep answered. Caleb held the lantern higher, its light shaking in his trembling grip. What are you? The thing blinked, one eye, then the other a beat too slow to be human. We are memory. We are what the sea cannot forget. He wanted to run. Everything in him screamed to flee, to leave this nightmare buried beneath tide and time. But somewhere in that tide was Elara. If she's here, Caleb said, then show me. Prove she's not gone. The thing in the water tilted its head. You're brave. Or foolish. It raised an arm and the surface rippled. From the black depths, a shape rose. Slowly, as if reluctant. A girl. Limp. Pale. Her skin the color of bone, her lips blue. Seaweed wound through her hair, her arms. But her eyes were still hers. Elara? Caleb whispered. She blinked once. And a tear, a real one, slipped down her cheek, lost instantly in the salt. Elara! He shouted, stepping forward. The mimic's voice coiled around him. She is yours if you wish her. But nothing comes without a trade. Caleb froze. A trade. A soul for a soul. It purred. You walk into the tide, and she walks out. Sounded too easy, which meant it wasn't. What happens to me? He asked. The mimic grinned, impossibly wide. You join the chorus. You become ours. You forget your name, your face. You remember only the dark. He looked back at Elara, his real sister, floating like a marionette in an invisible hand. Could he do it? Could he give up everything for her? He took a breath and stepped forward. The mimic's eyes gleamed, but just as his foot touched the water, a voice broke through the cave. No! It echoed, distant, choked with salt and fear. Elara, her real voice. She was trying to scream, to warn him, to stop him. Don't, she managed to croak. It's not me. It's not me anymore. Caleb staggered back, heart pounding. The mimic hissed. She's confused, it said, its voice losing shape. The tide took what it needed. She's a shadow now, a flicker. Elara's form floated closer, and her mouth moved again. It lies. The cave pulsed. The water grew darker, rising. Caleb backed up toward the entrance, toward the faint silver sliver of moonlight above. But the mimic advanced. You can't leave, it said. You called us when you searched. You brought your mind to the door. You're already halfway inside. He reached into his coat, pulling the only thing he had left from his grandfather's journal. An iron pendant, forged into the shape of a knot. A binding symbol. The mimic recoiled, its body flickering like static over water. You don't belong here, Caleb growled. And I'm not letting you wear my sister's face any longer. He hurled the pendant into the water, directly at the mimic. A scream not human ripped through the cave. The water recoiled, turning red, then black, then clear. Elara's body vanished, sucked into the depths with a whip of current. The mimic thrashed, dissolving into seafoam and shadow. The cave shook, rocks fell, and Caleb ran. The tunnel behind him collapsed, stone and seawater crashing as he dove into the night air, lungs burning. The ocean roared behind him, furious and alive. He didn't stop running until the cliffs were far behind, and the scream of the sea was just a whisper in the wind. Back in Grey Wick, the silence had lifted. The air was lighter, the waves calmer. For the first time in weeks, Caleb heard birds again. But Elara did not return. Her body never washed ashore. Her room remained untouched. Her journal, a new one, appeared on the windowsill 2 days later. Dry. Its pages empty. Maeve sat with it every morning, hoping it might one day write itself. Caleb knew better. He had touched the edge of that world. The one that hummed beneath the water, ancient and full of hungers that words could not hold. But he had also won in a way. He had denied the ocean its final trick. And in doing so, he'd saved his sister from becoming something else entirely. Sometimes, Caleb still dreams of her. Elara, laughing, standing in the shallows, sunlight in her hair. But behind her always is a shadow, a second figure, watching, waiting. He knows the ocean never forgets, and it never forgives. But for now it sleeps, and so does he. The sea, they said, was eternal. But eternal things do not forget, they remember. Weeks passed since Caleb sealed the tide cave, and the mimic vanished beneath the rocks. Grey Wick slowly began to breathe again. The fishermen returned to the docks. Children played near the shore. The sky, no longer gray with dread, wore blue like a borrowed smile. But Caleb had changed. He wore guilt like a second skin. He wandered the shoreline each night, searching for signs, fragments of Elara's return, or echoes of the thing that once wore her face. He found neither, only empty sand and the rhythmic hush of waves that no longer welcomed him. Then came the knock. It was just after midnight. A fog had rolled in thick as wool, swallowing the houses and street lamps whole. Caleb was hunched over his grandfather's journal, reading through old entries. When the knock came again, 3 soft taps, like fingertips on wood. He opened the door. No one was there, only a package, wrapped in oilcloth, damp with salt. Inside, a glass jar filled with dark water, and a single white seashell that pulsed faintly with light. The journal flipped open by itself, pages rustling, and stopped. There, scribbled in frantic, barely legible ink. If they return the gift, it means the tide is rising again. He took the shell to Renner, the lighthouse keeper. Renner's face went pale the moment he saw it. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "It was left at my door." Renner turned it over in trembling hands. "These are memory shells, used by the old sea priests. They store voices, confessions, sometimes last thoughts." He placed it on the table and pressed a finger to it. It sang. A woman's voice, soft, cracked by despair. Don't believe what it shows you. I thought I was saving him. I was wrong. The sea is a lie. A mouth that never stops whispering. Caleb froze. The voice was unmistakable. Elara. She was still alive. Somewhere. Renner reluctantly led him to the cliffs beyond the lighthouse, a place few dared to tread. Beneath a tangle of rocks and tide pools, hidden behind layers of moss and rusted chains, lay the entrance to the old monastery ruins. And below them, the drowned library. Long before Greywick was a fishing village, it was a place of offerings, Renner explained, unlocking the gate. The monks here didn't worship gods. They studied what lived in the deep. They descended narrow stairs, wet with condensation. The air smelled like old paper and rot. The library was half-sunken. Books preserved in glass cases. Strange runes carved into the floor. The ocean pressed against thick stone windows like a watching eye. Caleb found what he needed in a sealed scroll. Its ink faded but readable. A ritual. A calling. A way to breach the veil and walk the dreaming tide. The ritual required blood, memory, and salt drawn under the waxing moon. At midnight, Caleb stood in the center of the summoning circle, salt in one hand, the shell in the other. He whispered Elara's name. Again, again. And the water answered. It rose from the bowl, not splashing, but lifting, forming. A face, her face, but only for a moment. Then the water split open like an eye and pulled him inside. Caleb fell, not through space but through moments, through memories. His first step into the tide as a child. The way Elara used to braid Maeve's hair. Their mother's laugh echoing off the cliffs. Each memory wrapped around him like vines. Some warm, others cold. And then silence. He opened his eyes. He stood on a beach. But the sky was black, the stars unfamiliar. The water glowed faintly blue. Shapes moved beneath it. Faces. And on the shore stood Elara. Real this time. Or close enough. She ran to him but stopped inches away. It's not safe, she said. Not even here. He grabbed her hands. I'm taking you home. She looked at him, pain in her eyes. I'm not what I was. The sea took things from me. I remember too much. And not enough. Behind her, something began to rise from the waves. Massive. Limbs like kelp. Eyes like lighthouses turned inward. Watching. The sea was waking. Caleb had found her. That much was true. But rescue wouldn't be simple. Not anymore. Something older than grief stirred beneath that dream sea. Something that had worn the faces of 1,000 lost souls. It had let him in. Now would it let either of them out? The sky above the dream sea rippled like fabric in a storm. Stars flickering in and out of place. Caleb stood on that alien beach, hand in hand with Elara. Her skin was cold, her pulse faint, like something half-remembered by the living world. But her eyes were hers. She wasn't the mimic. She wasn't the sea's shadow. She was still Elara. And the sea hated that. Behind her, the water split. Not like before. This was wider, deeper. A thing the size of a cathedral began to emerge. Its form unreadable, like it couldn't decide how to be seen. 12 arms, none in the right place. Mouths that blinked. Eyes that whispered. The sea was birthing its god. And it had noticed them. The thing did not roar. It spoke. But not in words. Pressed feelings into Caleb's head. Dread like a flood. Regret like drowning in your own memories. A question soft and terrible. Do you still want her? Caleb staggered backward, the weight of the thought crushing his chest. He looked at Elara, her hands shaking, her breath shallow. She met his gaze. You have to go. Now. I'm not leaving without you. You don't understand. I died. Caleb. That day in the water I died. What's left of me is borrowed. The sea gave me this shape, but I'm not all there. He gritted his teeth. I don't care. We can find a way. Together. The god's shadow fell across them both, rising like a wave made of memory and grief. She belongs to us, the sea said. But you will take you instead. The water surged up Caleb's legs, trying to drag him backward. But he held Elara tight, even as the sea began to hum again. That low, hypnotic song that called minds into sleep. No! He shouted into the storm. You don't get to take her and make her into this. She's not your puppet. The god tilted what might have been its head. Then choose. A crack of lightning lit the impossible sky. Caleb saw all the others, those lost to the sea. Faces floating just below the surface, eyes wide and begging. His grandfather, Maeve, even the mimic. Its smile stretched too far, still echoing Elara's voice. Elara wept. Caleb, don't! But his hand found the seashell, the memory shell, still glowing faintly. He gripped it tight and pressed it to his heart. If memory is what you feed on, he said, then take mine. Take it all. Let her go. Let her live. The god paused, and then it opened, a rift in the water wide as the world. Caleb felt his memories pouring out of him, each one a drop, each one a wound. His childhood, his mother's voice, his name. Elara screamed, trying to pull away, but he held her still. You're going back, he said through gritted teeth. Even if I forget everything. Even if I forget you. She tried to say something else, but the tide exploded. The world fractured into foam and fire. And then, silence. He woke on the shore. Daylight. Waves lapping softly. No storm. No shadows. Just peace. People were running toward him. Fishermen, townsfolk, someone from the lighthouse. And behind them, Elara. Alive. Real. She ran into his arms. But he only looked at her. Confused. Do I know you? He asked. She froze, her heart breaking. But she nodded. You did, she whispered. And that's enough. Caleb never remembered what happened beneath the sea. His memories were fractured, names with no faces, faces with no names. He wandered the beaches often, as if drawn by something long forgotten. Elara stayed by his side, never pushing, never explaining more than he could bear. Sometimes she would hum to herself, a tune from childhood, the same lullaby their mother used to sing. And on those days he would smile without knowing why. In the deep, far below the ocean's surface, something waits. The god is still there, still hungry, still whispering in the silence between waves. But it remembers the boy who defied it, and the memory it couldn't keep. Because love, even when forgotten, leaves a scar the sea cannot wash